The millionaire freezes in shock as the homeless girl warns him, "You will die if you stay here." Nathaniel's breath hitched as the cold night air bit into his lungs. The city skyline shimmered behind him, a glittering fortress of glass and steel. The life he'd built, the fortune he'd hoarded. Yet here he was, stepping through cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. In a part of town he'd never dared visit before, his expensive shoes made the wrong kind of noise against the garbage-strewn pavement. Every shadow felt like it was watching him, every distant shout slicing the silence. Then, out of nowhere, a voice cracked the night. "You will die if you stay here." He spun around. There she stood, a girl no older than 16, her clothes threadbare and smeared, eyes flashing with an eerie certainty. Her voice wasn't the soft whisper he expected. It was sharp, urgent, like a warning carved from ice. Nathaniel couldn't quite place the chill crawling up his spine. "What?" he asked, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. The girl didn't flinch. "People like you, rich ones, they come around here. They get hurt, bleeding, broken, maybe worse." Her gaze didn't waver as sirens moaned somewhere in the distance. "I've seen it happen. I know what's coming." He laughed, a bitter edge cutting through his disbelief. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," she snapped back, stepping closer. The street lamp flickered wildly, casting her face in shadows and sudden highlights. "You've got a look in your eyes. Guilt, like you're running from something." Nathaniel's chest tightened. The memory of his wife's empty chair at home pressed down on him with unbearable weight. The parties, the endless spending, the walls built around him by gold and lies. Had his money drawn this threat? Or maybe his ignorance? A loud bang echoed nearby. Nathaniel jumped, heart thrumming wildly. The sounds grew, a distant scuffle, muffled cries. The neighborhood pulsed with danger, raw and real. "Why are you warning me?" he demanded, his voice low, shaky. She hesitated, then whispered, "Because I don't want you to die here, not like the others, not before you see what's really going on." He noticed for the first time the trembling in her hands, the dirt beneath her fingernails. A sudden empathy surged through him, breaking through the walls of his blame and sadness. "Tell me," he said softly. But as he leaned in, shadows shifted. Figures slipped through alleyways like ghosts, eyes glinting in the dark, voices murmuring threats. And neon signs buzzed overhead, while a cold wind whispered warnings that weren't just from Lila. He felt a presence, shadowy and patient. Someone was watching, waiting. Lila grabbed his sleeve, her grip tight and desperate. "You're caught in something bigger," she said, her voice dropping to a hush. "They don't just hurt the homeless. They target anyone who crosses their path." Nathaniel's mind raced. Crime syndicates, cover-ups, a web of violence and fear threading through this forgotten corner of the city. And Lila, this broken girl with a past darker than the alleys around them, held secrets that could either unravel it all or drag them under. A sudden shriek split the night, blowing the air apart. Panic flared in Nathaniel's chest. He had a choice: run back to the safety of his penthouse, or step deeper into a nightmare he never imagined facing. The homeless girl's chilling words echoed, loud as a gunshot in the silence. "You will die if you stay here." But who was the shadow stalking them just beyond the light? And what was the price for crossing into this world? Nathaniel stood frozen, the weight of his past crashing down like a tidal wave. The choice wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about facing the monster hiding within his own life. Hey, before you continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. Nathaniel stood frozen, the weight of his past crashing down like a tidal wave. He could feel Lila's grip on his sleeve, her fingers trembling in a way that echoed the panic gnawing at his insides. "We need to move," she urged, her eyes. "Lila, what do you know?" She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, a figure leaped from the darkness, slamming hard into Nathaniel. He stumbled back, gasping as he hit the ground. A flashlight beam sliced through the night, illuminating a man with wild eyes. The air crackled with fear. "You shouldn't be here," the stranger growled, his voice gravelly, like stones grinding against each other. The blade glinting in his hand sent chills down Nathaniel's spine. Lila backed away slowly, her eyes wide as she tried to assess the situation. "No, you don't understand," she shouted. Nathaniel scrambled to his feet, adrenaline racing. "Lila, what is going on?" But before she could respond, the stranger lunged, swinging the knife with a furious swipe. Nathaniel dodged, barely escaping the blow, but the proximity of death pushed him past his breaking point. The panic surged, survival instincts kicking in. He had to protect himself. "Stay away from her!" Nathaniel shouted, a strange defiance growing inside him. "Why?" the man hissed, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "She's the reason you're in danger." The cold realization dawned on Nathaniel. "What do you mean?" he gasped, glancing at Lila, who now stood frozen in place, her face pale. The stranger continued, his tone heavy with accusation. "She's wrapped up in all this. She knows too much. You think she's warning you? She's playing you, rich boy." "No!" Lila screamed suddenly, her voice piercing the tension. "I'm trying to save you." Before Nathaniel could respond, the man lunged forward again. This time, Lila sprang into action. She pushed Nathaniel aside, taking the brunt of the attack, the blade slicing through her coat and into her side. Time slowed. Nathaniel's heart thumped like war drums. Blood blossomed against the fabric, bright and shocking. "Lila!" He reached for her, shock flooding his senses. She fell to her knees, gasping. You have to go," she whispered. But her eyes were fading, desperation etched in every line of her face. The man retreated, a look of grim satisfaction lighting up his features. A predator basking in the chaos. "You wanted to enter the darkness? Now it's got you." Nathaniel's head spun, the moment tangled into a mess of emotions. Fear, betrayal, and a brutal clarity. "This was never about me," he realized, breathless. Lila had warned him. But had it all been a trap? With adrenaline driving him, he turned to run, his heart pounding in his ears. But as he glanced back, Lila's body crumpled to the curb, and the sound of sirens began to pulse in the distance. What had he stepped into? The city's underbelly was darker than he ever imagined. Could he escape this world? Or was he now marked, just like her? The shadows seemed to reach for him. As he ran, the question echoed. Was it too late to turn back? And who had he truly trusted in the end? Nathaniel ran, his heart pounding a chaotic beat in his chest. The sirens wailed in the distance, needles of fear piercing through his mind. He barely remembered how he got here, standing in a world that didn't belong to him. The alley was slick with darkness, shadows slithering around him. He had to escape, but not without Lila. He twisted back to her, terror pooling in his stomach as he saw her crumpled form on the curb. "Lila!" he shouted, racing towards her. Every step felt like a whirlwind of dread. He dropped to his knees beside her, cradling her against him. The warmth of her blood seeped through his fingers, a cruel reminder of the knife's bite. "Why?" he choked, desperation knotting his voice. "You shouldn't have pushed me away." "Just go," Lila gasped, her breath coming shallow and ragged. "You don't understand." He shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. "No, no, stay with me. Help is coming." But Lila's gaze drifted past him, her expression turning distant. Panic clawed at Nathaniel. "What do you see?" he pleaded. And then everything changed. A loud crash erupted from the alley, followed by a figure bursting into the light. A woman appeared, long dark hair, a fierce glint in her eyes, and a look of pure intent. Nathaniel recognized her. It was Heather, his assistant. But how? "Get away from her!" Heather shouted, whipping a sidearm from beneath her coat, the movement swift and precise. "You, move!" Lila's eyes widened, shifting between Nathaniel and Heather as if struggling to comprehend. "No, please!" "Shut up!" Heather barked, stepping forward. "You don't know what you're dealing with. Nathaniel, get back!" He rose slowly, confusion eating at him. "Heather, why are you here? What's going on?" But before she could answer, the shadowy figure from before lunged back into view. The knife glinted again, this time aimed at Heather. "Don't you dare!" she screamed, firing a shot that tore through the night. The man dropped, a pained scream escaping his lips. The scene froze, the echo of the gunshot suspended like a heartbeat. And then another figure emerged beside Heather, a man in a suit. Nathaniel blinked in disbelief. It was Martin, his business partner. "What the hell is this?" Martin shouted, his voice thick with urgency. "This isn't your game anymore," Heather snapped. "You brought him here." Nathaniel's mind raced. "What are you talking about?" "No time," she shouted, pushing him towards a side exit. "We need to get out of here. The whole city is watching." But Lila gasped, a soft whimper escaping her lips. "You don't understand the truth. He's in danger because of you," Martin spat, pointing an accusatory finger. "And you're dragging him down with you." Everything hit Nathaniel at once. The tension, the urgency, the dizzying swirl of trust and betrayal. "What do you know? What's the truth?" he shouted, his voice wild. Lila's eyes flickered. The pain in her face shifted into something darker, more revealing. You were never meant to be here. You were a pawn all along." "Pawn?" he echoed, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. "I had to protect you," she cried, desperation intertwining with something else, something fierce. "I was sent to warn you." They all froze. The answers hung heavy in the air. Sent to warn him? Who the hell were they really dealing with? And suddenly, the reality crashed down like a wave. Every smile, every trusted glance, everything Nathaniel believed began to unravel. "Lila, who are you?" he whispered, fear and disbelief pooling around him. But before she could answer, lights flooded the alley, police cars converging, red and blue casting a haunting glow across their faces. Voices called out, demanding everyone to freeze. Nathaniel's heart raced again, not just from fear, but confusion over the sudden shift in reality. Those he thought he could trust were collapsing into shadows. With his breathing quickening and uncertainty crowding his mind, Nathaniel stood at the edge, teetering between loyalty and survival. What lay ahead? Would he ever uncover the truth of who Lila was? And most importantly, who had orchestrated this nightmare? Nathaniel stood frozen, the weight of his past crashing down like a tidal wave. The flare of police lights cast a bright, flickering glow on the grimy walls of the alley. He could hear the distant sound of sirens closing in, drow. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Lila, please," he cried, cradling her in his arms, desperate for her to hang on. She was losing the fight, and it felt like his chest was being crushed under a mountain of guilt. "Help is coming!" But the sirens weren't just sirens. They turned sharp, relentless, like vultures circling for the kill. Heather and Martin exchanged frantic looks, their world unraveling around them. "Get Lila out of the way," Heather shouted, her eyes darting toward Nathaniel. "You can't stay here." "Why? What is happening?" he demanded. But the answers twisted in the air, desperate to slip away. Lila gasped again, her eyes fluttering, shadows creeping into their depths. "You must—" Her voice faltered, and she coughed, blood speckling her lips. Nathaniel felt his heart lurch at the sight. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out from the other end of the alley. It stumbled through the air, sending shockwaves that knocked the world askew. The metallic scent of gunpowder filled Nathaniel's nostrils, as if the night were bleeding chaos. In an instant, everything shifted. More figures emerged, rushing in from the darkness, men clad in black with faces obscured by masks. They stormed forward like an unstoppable wave, eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. "Run!" Martin yelled, but it felt like slow motion. Nathaniel scrambled to pull Lila to safety, desperately trying to shield her. He was lost in a field of noise, the screams, the shouts, the chaos merging into a singular, heart-racing rhythm. The gunfire came again. Nathaniel's breath hitched as he caught a glimpse of the masked men, their brutal force crashing like a tsunami. But then came the twist. Just as Nathaniel thought he found his footing, he felt a sharp sting in his side. Confusion swirled around him. He looked down. The pain blossomed into a crimson tide. A needle, sleek and cold, poked out from his coat. "No!" he shouted, clutching at his side. But the world started to blur. Lila's eyes widened in horror as she saw him falter. "Nathaniel, no! You're one of them!" The accusation broke from his lips like shattered glass, realization striking him like lightning. "You!" But Lila shook her head, tears spilling down her dirt-smeared cheeks. "It's not what you think. I tried to warn you." Heather and Martin stood frozen, the world tilting on its axis, their certainty collapsing. The masked men surged past them with ruthless efficiency. The night became a vortex of chaos, sirens blaring and shadows swirling. Nathaniel's legs buckled beneath him, legs that had once carried him through boardrooms, now crumpling in the dirt. Lila scrambled to keep him upright, her own injury forgotten. "Why did you betray me?" he croaked. hurt intertwining with betrayal as darkness draped over him. "Nathaniel, listen," she gasped, her voice desperate, barely audible over the chaos. "I never meant—" But she was cut off by the thunderous clash of a door slamming open nearby, sending echoes ricocheting off the alley walls. The police poured in, their uniforms a stark contrast to the chaos. "Put down your weapons," a voice barked, commanding attention. The masked figures paused, a hesitation, a crack in their facade. And in that moment of chaos, Nathaniel caught a fleeting glimpse of their eyes. They weren't just anyone. They were familiar. "Martin!" he gasped in horror, watching his business partner slip into a chaotic dance of shadows and deceit. Something inside Nathaniel splintered. "What have you done?" he whispered, chaos creeping in. Questions spun like a cyclone in his mind. Who was really manipulating whom? Was anyone real in this dark, twisted game? And as the police swarmed forward, Nathaniel's world crumbled beneath him. The weight of betrayal felt heavier than any knife. What truth lay hidden in the depths of this chaos? Could he ever see the light again? Nathaniel stood there, the weight of everything crashing down like a ton of bricks. He looked at Lila, blood pooling around her on the cold concrete, her breath growing shallow. Panic clawed at his insides. The police were closing in, but all he could focus on was the girl who had tried to save him. "Lila, help is here!" he shouted, but the words felt thin and helpless. The sirens wailed around them, but time felt like it was freezing. Heather pushed forward, determined. "Get her behind me," she commanded, pointing her gun at the masked men, who were suddenly backing away, their shadows retreating like they were afraid of the approaching light. The threat was palpable. "Don't let them take me," Lila cried, her voice a desperate whisper. "You have to trust me." But trust was a fragile thing, and now it felt like a lie. Nathaniel felt the blood drain from his face. What had he gotten himself into? The odds were shifting with each passing second. And then, just as everything teetered on the brink, a loud crash echoed, not from the alley, not from the approaching police, but from the rooftops above. Everyone looked up. A figure dropped down from the shadows, landing gracefully between Nathaniel and the encroaching danger. A man in a black tactical suit, hidden beneath a mask, was suddenly in their midst. "Get Lila, now!" he boomed, his voice low and commanding. Without a second thought, Nathaniel instinctively moved to pull Lila away from the curb, but the masked man stepped in, blocking his path. "Watch out!" the guy yelled, just as the masked figures lunged forward again, moving with terrifying precision. Gunfire erupted. There was nothing Nathaniel could do. Lila screamed, and the world spun. Just then, out of the smoke and chaos, he caught a glimpse of Heather stepping back into the fray, trying to keep the masked men at bay. "Lila, focus on me," Nathaniel urged, clutching her hand. She blinked, and for a moment, he thought he saw understanding behind her pain. But it vanished almost instantly. The alley transformed into a battleground, sounds crashing against his senses. Lila breathed heavier, and somewhere in the whirlwind, he noticed her face changing. "Why did you come?" Lila gasped, each word a struggle. "You shouldn't have come to find me." Then, the masked man shouted again. "This ends now." He lunged toward the circle of chaos, arms wide, ready for battle. Suddenly, a flash of light erupted from behind him, a blinding beam slicing through the haze of confusion. It felt unreal, almost like a spotlight had settled on them. Time halted. The masked man froze. A strange glitch. The incredulity in his eyes turned to shock. Lila gasped, "No!" What happened next was a blur. Lila's hand jerked from Nathaniel's grip as she took a step forward, her body trembling. She stared straight at the masked man, her eyes wide, a depth of recognition flooding through. "Richard?" Her voice echoed like an open wound. The revelation hit Nathaniel like a freight train. Richard? Who was Richard? But before he could form a question, everything exploded into chaos. The police were on them. Shouts filled the air, and Lila's face transformed from shock to something darker, something fierce. "You lied to me," Lila yelled, her voice rising. "You said you weren't involved." Nathaniel's mind raced. What was happening? Who was this Richard guy? And how was he tied into all of this? "Lila?" The masked man shouted back, desperation creeping into his tone. "You know I did this to protect you. You need to trust me." But before either of them could say another word, a sharp crack sliced through the night. The gunfire didn't just split the air, it split open the fabric of their reality. Lila staggered back, as if struck by a heavy blow, her eyes wide as she crumpled to the ground. A scream erupted from Nathaniel's throat. "No, no, not Lila!" Everything went silent. The world blurred again, shifting, morphing. The crowd around them was a sea of faces, some shocked, others confused, murmurs belching like echoes in the chaos. Richard? What secrets had he been hiding? Nathaniel felt his knees buckle as he looked down at Lila's pale face. "What did I do?" he murmured, trembling. What had he stepped into? The alley closed in on him, darkness waiting just beyond the flickering lights, and the question hung heavy in the air. Who could he trust anymore? Nathaniel knelt on the concrete, the neon lights above blurring as horror sank its claws into his heart. Lila's body lay limp in his arms, each breath a fading whisper. He felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. "Help is coming!" he shouted again, though the panic clawed at his throat. The police were there, but the chaos had engulfed them. The moment was surreal, like he was stuck in a nightmare. "Lila, please," he urged, shaking her gently. But her eyes were distant, clouded. Fear coiled around his chest. "What did you do?" he hissed, glaring at Richard, who was still frozen in shock. "Stop!" Heather interrupted, her voice piercing through the fog of confusion. "We can't let them!" But it was too late. Gunfire erupted again, and the masked figures closed in, retreating, but not without one more vicious strike. Nathaniel turned, just in time to see one of them pull a weapon, a snarl twisting their face. Time slowed. In an instant that stretched into eternity, Nathaniel leaped to shield Lila, his body instinctively reacting to save her. He felt the wind from the bullet pass too close, the sound crackling like thunder in his ears. Then everything shattered. Suddenly, a figure lunged from the darkness. A woman, familiar yet twisted, surging toward them. "Nathaniel!" she shouted, her voice unmistakable. It was Clara, Nathaniel's estranged sister. His heart stopped. "Clara? What are you doing here?" But before he could process her arrival, she reached into her pocket, pulling out a small device. A flash of light burst forth, drowning everything in a blinding white glow. "Get down!" she commanded, urgency pouring from her. Nathaniel dropped, instinct overriding confusion, The world spun into chaos as he twisted, grasping Lila's hand. But as the light faded, the masked figures staggered back, their presence unraveling like a poorly tied knot. Clara's hand was raised, a strange calm in her frantic movements. "Tell them to hold their fire," she shouted, the authority in her voice slicing through the air. The tension rippled as the police hesitated. "What's happening?" Heather shouted, her eyes darting between Clara and Nathaniel. "What are you doing?" Clara stepped forward, her expression fierce. "You don't understand. There's a reason Lila is here. I was sent to protect her and Nathaniel. You're all in danger." Nathaniel blinked in disbelief, trying to grasp the whirlwind of revelations. "Sent by whom?" he whispered, the words choking out like smoke. Clara's face turned solemn. "By a group that's been watching the movements of powerful players in this city. They'll stop at nothing. They're already closing in on you." In that moment, just as her words sank in, Lila gasped. She twisted, her eyes fiery. "No, you don't get to do this!" "Lila?" Nathaniel trembled, confusion feasting on his thoughts. What did she mean? But then Lila opened her mouth, and the words spilled out like a torrent. "You were never meant to find me. This is all a game. My father—" Silence fell like a hammer. The word father hung in the air, heavy with its implications. Everyone froze, shock coursing through each person present. "Your father?" Nathaniel choked out, confusion and disbelief intertwining. "What do you mean?" Suddenly, Lila's face twisted with anger, but there was something else. A flicker of something deceitful, almost malicious. "Everything you think you know is wrong, Nathaniel. I never wanted to be saved. I needed you to be drawn in. You were the perfect bait." Nathaniel's heart plummeted. Bait! The realization tore through him. "What are you hiding? Why would you—" But before he could finish, Clara took a bold step closer, determination blazing in her eyes. "Get back! She's not who you think she is!" The world tipped sideways. The ground beneath Nathaniel's feet felt unstable, as if everything he knew had flipped inside out. Lila, this girl he had felt so drawn to, was now the center of a plot he couldn't even fathom. A loud crash shattered the air again. This time, not from the masked men or the police, but from the shadows above. More people emerged, and Nathaniel realized the depth of the trap closing around him. "Hold your positions!" a new voice commanded, even more authoritative than Clara's, tinged with something darker. Figures emerged from the shadows, all too familiar, with eyes that danced with shadows of the past. "What's happening?" Nathaniel asked again, the questions growing like a storm inside him. But the truth twisted deeper, slipping through his fingers. Who could he trust now? And what awaited him as the darkness closed in? Nathaniel knelt on the ground, the chaos still swirling around him. The masked figures were inching closer, their intentions hanging thick in the air. Clara's sudden entrance had brought a moment of clarity, but now that clarity faded under the weight of Lila's blood soaking into the concrete. "Tell them to stop!" Heather shouted, her eyes darting between Nathaniel, Lila, and Clara. The sirens wailed, lighting up the dark alleyway with chaotic red and blue flashes. Time felt like quicksand, slipping through their fingers as the pressure mounted. Lila's breath hitched, her eyes fluttering as she fought to stay conscious. "Nathaniel," she gasped, her voice trembling. "You have to believe me. I didn't mean to put you in danger." But before he could respond, the world exploded into motion again. The air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder, the echoing gunshots crescendoing into a deafening symphony of chaos. The masked figures were retreating, but their eyes held a fierce determination. They wouldn't quit that easily. "Keep her safe," Clara shouted, shoving Nathaniel aside just as another masked man lunged at them, knife glinting. She tackled him to the ground, a flurry of movement and adrenaline. "Get back!" she yelled, grappling with the attacker. It was chaos, limbs flailing as Heather aimed her gun, ready to fire. Nathaniel felt a surge of panic. He couldn't just watch. He had to do something. But Lila's voice pulled him back. "Nathaniel, look out!" He spun around, just in time to see a figure slip through the shadows. A tall man, with sharp features and dark eyes. The moment he stepped into the light, Nathaniel recognized him. "Francesco?" he breathed, disbelief threading through his veins. Francesco had been a name whispered among business circles, a figure tied to rumors, dark dealings, power plays. "What are you doing here?" Nathaniel demanded, his heart racing. "Are you really that surprised?" Francesco smirked, icy confidence radiating from every pore. "You thought you were safe, didn't you? This was all just a game to see how far you'd go." "What do you mean?" Nathaniel felt the ground shift beneath him, confusion and dread coiling in his gut. "Lila was bait. You just didn't know it," Francesco replied, his voice dripping with amusement. "You were never meant to help her. It was always about drawing you in. Now look at this mess." "No," Lila gasped, shaking her head, but her voice was growing weaker. "You can't trust him, Nathaniel. He's lying." Suddenly, the night split open with a blinding flash. Nathaniel squinted, the light flooding the alley, washing away the darkness. The police were closing in, their presence like a tidal wave, shoving. The masked men hesitated, weighing their options as sirens blared, an army of blue and red pressing in from all sides. But just as the tension reached its peak, the blinding light condensed to a single beam and revealed something shocking. At the center stood Lila, her body glowing, eyes flashing with an otherworldly light. "What's going on?" Nathaniel gasped, heart racing. The masked figures stumbled back, fear painting their faces as their bravado waned. "No, not her," one of them cried, falling to his knees. "This isn't what we signed up for." "Lila, what are you?" Nathaniel's voice trembled, disbelief choking him. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she whispered, the light intensifying. "But it's too late. You need to trust me now." Everything shifted in an instant. Relationships unraveled like threads, and Nathaniel felt the ground give way beneath him. "What did you do?" he whispered, unable to comprehend. Before she could respond, a shockwave erupted from Lila, sending everyone tumbling. Her power rippled through the alley, leaving Nathaniel breathless. The world was tipping, the boundaries of trust and reality melting away. "Lila, stop!" he shouted, panic coursing through him. But as the light enveloped them, Nathaniel realized nothing would ever be the same again. And in the collapsing silence that followed, one question loomed in the air, heavy with uncertainty. Who was Lila, really? And what had she drawn Nathaniel into? Nathaniel knelt in the chaos, the blinding light wrapping around them like a thick fog. Lila's glow flickered, her voice reverberating through the din as she pleaded with him to trust her. But trust was slipping through his fingers like sand, every revelation unraveling the tightly woven fabric of his reality. Suddenly, a bone-chilling scream erupted from the distance, piercing through the noise and drawing everyone's attention. It was a sound of pure terror, one that froze Nathaniel to the core. The alley turned silent, the masked men pausing mid-motion, eyes darting toward the source of the scream. What the hell was that? Nathaniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. Before anyone could respond, the shadows shifted again, and out of the corner of his eye, Nathaniel saw a van screech into the alley, a dark, windowless vehicle that skidded to a halt. The back doors flung open, and two men in tactical gear leapt out, guns drawn, barking orders as they scanned the scene. "Everybody down," one of them shouted, his voice laced with authority. "Get on the ground, T." Lila's glowing form dimmed, her strength waning, and she stumbled backward, crashing into Nathaniel's arms. "Lila!" he cried, feeling her warmth fade, her light extinguishing as the reality of the moment struck him. But then, as the van's doors opened wider, a figure stepped out that made Nathaniel's heart nearly stop. It was the last person he ever expected to see, his wife, Sarah. Dressed in black tactical gear, she looked fierce and determined. Eyes blazing with a fire Nathaniel could hardly recognize. "Sarah?" he breathed, unable to comprehend. "What are you doing here?" "Get his attention on me," Sarah shouted at her men, ignoring Nathaniel completely. "I'll deal with Lila." Confusion twisted in Nathaniel's gut. "What do you mean, deal with her?" he asked, bewildered. "You can't. She's injured." But Sarah's gaze was cold, her focus alighting on Lila, who was slipping dangerously in and out of consciousness. "She's not what you think, Nathaniel," Sarah said, her voice steady. "She's dangerous." "What do you mean, dangerous?" he shot back, anger and disbelief warring inside him. "She just saved my life." The tension hovered like a live wire. The police were still trying to establish order, but Nathaniel felt the chaos creeping closer. The masked figures were regrouping in the shadows, and every second counted. "Listen to me," Sarah snapped. "You don't understand the stakes here. Lila is part of something bigger, something dangerous. She's a pawn in a game you can't even begin to comprehend." As those words sank in, a new fear crept over Nathaniel. What are you saying?" he stammered, the weight of revelations churning like a storm in his chest. "What's really going on?" Before Sarah could respond, Lila gasped, her eyes locking onto Nathaniel's. "You have to run!" she wheezed, desperation lacing her tone. "They'll come for you next." And in that moment, something shifted in the tension. The masked figures moved again, this time with purpose, hands reaching for weapons, the air charged with imminent violence. Nathaniel looked back at Sarah, heart racing. "Why didn't you tell me? Have you known all along?" "I'm trying to protect you," she snapped, but her voice wavered slightly. "You don't get to decide what's best for yourself right now. This is beyond you." The balance of power tipped. With Lila clinging to him, Nathaniel felt the ground beneath them shift. The alley erupted into chaos again. Gunfire, screams, and the crackling presence of fear drowning the air as the figures clashed. In that moment, everything fell apart. Trust shattered. Relationships warped into grotesque shapes against the backdrop of violence. Nathaniel glanced back at Lila, but as her frail form grew weaker, he realized the deeper truth. Everyone was hiding something, and the danger was larger than any conspiracy he could imagine. He took a deep breath, caught between the woman he thought he loved and the girl who had turned his world upside down. The sirens wailed louder, the sounds converging into a cacophony that echoed through the dark alley. But the only question that Nathaniel knelt in the chaos, the blinding light wrapping around them like a thick fog. Lila's glow flickered, her voice reverberating through the din as she pleaded with him to trust her. But trust was slipping through his fingers like sand, every revelation unraveling the tightly woven fabric of his reality. Suddenly, a bone-chilling scream erupted from the distance, piercing through the noise and drawing everyone's attention. It was a sound of pure terror, one that froze Nathaniel to the core. The alley turned silent, the masked men pausing mid-motion, eyes darting toward the source of the scream. What the hell was that? Nathaniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. Before anyone could respond, the shadows shifted again, and out of the corner of his eye, Nathaniel saw a van screech into the alley, a dark, windowless vehicle that skidded to a halt. The back doors flung open, and two men in tactical gear leapt out, guns drawn, barking orders as they scanned the scene. Everybody! And in that moment of chaos, something even more surprising happened. Lila's glowing form dimmed, her strength waning, and she stumbled backward, crashing into Nathaniel's arms. "Lila!" he cried, feeling her warmth fade, her light extinguishing as the reality of the moment struck him. But then as the van's doors opened wider, a figure stepped out that made Nathaniel's heart nearly stop. It was the last person he ever expected to see. His wife, Sarah. Dressed in black tactical gear, she looked fierce and determined, eyes blazing with a fire Nathaniel could hardly recognize. "Sarah?" he breathed, unable to comprehend. "What are you doing here?" "Get his attention on me!" Sarah shouted at her men, ignoring Nathaniel completely. "I'll deal with Lila." Confusion twisted in Nathaniel's gut. "What do you mean, deal with her?" he asked, bewildered. "You can't. She's injured." But Sarah's gaze was cold, her focus alighting on Lila, who was slipping dangerously in and out of consciousness. "She's not what you think, Nathaniel," Sarah said, her voice steady. "She's dangerous." "What do you mean, dangerous?" he shot back, anger and disbelief warring inside him. "She just saved my life." The tension hovered like a live wire. With Lila clinging to him, Nathaniel felt the ground beneath them shift. The alley erupted into chaos again. Gunfire, screams, and the crackling presence of fear, drowning the air as the figures clashed. In that moment, everything fell apart. Trust shattered. Relationships warped into grotesque shapes against the backdrop of violence. Nathaniel glanced back at Lila, but as her frail form grew weaker, he realized the deeper truth. Everyone was hiding something, and the danger was larger than any conspiracy he could imagine. He took a deep breath, caught between the woman he thought he loved and the girl who had turned his world upside down. Just then, Sarah pulled a small device from her pocket, its screen flickering with bright lights. "I'm not going to let you hurt her," she shouted, her voice booming over the chaos. But before she could act, a surge of energy pulsed from Lila, a shockwave that knocked everyone down, including Nathaniel. Light flooded the alley, blinding them for a heartbeat. And when it dimmed, something had changed. Lila was gone. Nathaniel sat up, panic flooding his senses as the blinding light faded to darkness, leaving a chilling silence behind. "Lila?" he called, dread thickening every word. But the silence was deafening. Instead of Lila, something dark and twisted emerged from the shadows, obscene shapes morphing into human figures. They grinned, maliciously, their faces contorting into an array of familiar and unfamiliar visages. Nathaniel's heart raced. "What is happening?" he murmured, confusion morphing into fear. And then it struck him. In the flicker of the light, he saw Lila, her form morphing. She wasn't just missing. She had transformed into something unrecognizable, something sinister. Her eyes, those once vibrant orbs, flickered to black, consuming all light. "No, no," Nathaniel gasped, backing away. "Lila." His heart shattered as the realization settled. "Your precious Lila is gone, Nathaniel." Sarah's voice transformed, morphing into something more sinister. "You've been dancing on strings you can't even see." The people surrounding him, the police, the masked figures, were now grinning as if they were all part of the charade. "What are you?" he screamed, the walls of reality closing in, twisting his world into a nightmare. The ground rumbled beneath him. Shadows danced like flames, a mocking performance. As Sarah stepped closer, her demeanor exuding newfound power. "Welcome to the true game, Nathaniel. You're not the player. You never were. You were always meant to be the pawn." As the gravity of her words anchored him, Nathaniel felt ice trickle down his spine. What had they unleashed? What had he walked into? And as the laughter echoed around him, encasing him in darkness, the question loomed larger than ever. Who was really pulling the strings? Nathaniel's heart raced as he realized the darkness surrounding him was more than just a game. Sarah stood before him, a figure of authority now taken over by the very shadows they once feared. Lila, the girl who had once shown him the truth, was now in a state he could barely comprehend. Clarity and chaos danced around him, intricately intertwined. "No, you're lying," he yelled, stepping forward, fueled by a love that was rapidly being choked by betrayal. The masked figures drew nearer, their laughter cold and cruel. "You said you were working to save us. Look around," Sarah hissed, her voice fierce. "You have been a pawn, Nathaniel. This world isn't what you think. And Lila, she's at its center. You don't understand who you're up against." The air thickened, heavy with the weight of Sarah's words. Nathaniel felt the lump in his throat swell. How could this be? How could he have trusted those who were playing with lives like pieces on a chessboard? "And you?" he fired back, tremors in his hands. "What have you done?" The darkness curled around them, tightening its grip as the masked figures advanced. Lila, barely conscious, looked between them. "Stop, please," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to fight." But it was too late. The madness erupted as chaos spread through the alley again. Gunfire rang out, and the world twisted into pinpricks of sound and fury. Nathaniel dove to protect Lila as shadows lunged. The realization struck. This was not just about him anymore. He had to save her. "Get away from her," Nathaniel roared, lunging at the nearest masked figure, pushing him to the side. The violence was primal, born from a desperation he never knew existed within him. Lila's hand clutched his, the warmth just barely there. "Nathaniel, you have to be careful." But her words hinted at something deeper, a connection built on trust. He noticed her glow flickering again. "Fight it, Lila. You're stronger than this." The pulse of energy in the air shifted, resonating with the urgency of the moment. With each word Nathaniel spoke, Lila's light began to return, firing up like embers, reigniting in a cold hearth. "Enough!" Sarah shouted, stepping forward, her tactical expression faltering slightly. "We can't do this here. We need to leave." But before she could lead them out, the figures lunged, a rush of bodies creating a wall between them. Nathaniel's breath caught. They surrounded him, but then Lila's voice rose above the chaos. "No!" A powerful wave emanated from her, strong enough to push back the masked figures, sending shockwaves through the crowd. For a split second, time halted. Nathaniel blinked. Hope surged within, and he felt Lila's power fill the air, anchoring him to an unshakable truth. "Lila!" he called, pure intensity thrumming in his chest. The glowing energy swept through him, empowering every fiber of his being. With a final push, he watched as Lila, majestic and radiant, burst forth from the shadows. She stood tall, illuminating the dark alley with her pure light, flooding the air with hope and clarity. But Sarah's expression twisted with fury. "You can't control this! We have to go now!" "No!" Nathaniel shouted, stepping between Sarah and Lila, a protective instinct ignited within. "This is our moment. You've kept me in the dark. It's time to reveal the truth." The crowd of civilians, now the police, stood frozen. Their faces mirrored the tension that stretched like taut strings. "Let's end this," Nathaniel declared, voice steady and unwavering. He stepped forward, ready to confront whatever came next. But just then, the masked figures retreated, slipping back into the shadows, the threat dissolving like smoke. They seemed to know their defeat was imminent. "Run! They'll regroup!" Sarah shouted, but Nathaniel could feel it, their power waning. With Lila by his side, light radiating fiercely, Nathaniel felt the shackles of deception fall away. "What do you want from me?" he asked, voice low yet firm. Finally, the masked men vanished into the darkness, leaving only echoes behind. As if waking from a dream, Nathaniel turned to Lila. "You're okay. You saved us." Lila smiled softly, the glow around her dimming but still strong. "You believed in me, and now things can change." And with that, the darkness receded further. The police began to step forward, and Nathaniel knew, despite the chaos, hope had flickered anew. But the shadows weren't gone. They lingered, waiting. "Where do we go from here?" Lila asked. Nathaniel wrapped his arms around her. "We keep moving forward, together." But for how long could they stay ahead of the shadows? What horrors still lurked in the dark? Only time would tell. And as they stepped into the light of dawn, an urgent plea pulsed through the air. You must subscribe now. Don't wait another second to show your support for the channel. Click like to feed the algorithm and ensure these exclusive stories keep coming. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories. And don't forget to share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know how it ends. This is your story too. Make sure you're part of the journey.